Hi guys, and welcome to my March video for the 2016 Classics Challenge. So this month I read To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. I have this rather nice 50th anniversary edition, which is the one that I read because I didn't want to damage my even nicer 50th anniversary edition cloth bound. I only have the two. The leather bound is on my list. I need the leather bound version more than I need life. I completely loved To Kill a Mockingbird. I mean, I was a bit iffy in the beginning when we started and Scout was narrating and it was all about summer and I was a bit like, okay. Like, I got to chapter 4 and I was a bit like, okay, where is this going? But the setting was starting to be built up around me and I was getting more and more into it and more invested because there was a whole mystery of who is Boo Radley, and then the gifts in the tree, and then obviously the trial and everything started. So I got more and more into it. I got completely lost in the book. The setting is built up in such a way that you start to see the town rise up around you. You can feel the heat from the summer. You get an idea of what this location is, what this setting is. It's a small town down south. Everybody knows everybody. It's very gossipy. Appearances matter so much. So yeah, small town. In the 1930s. This one was a lot easier to read because it was a more modern book, obviously, so it was written in a more modern way. But Scout's narrative was what really made it for me. Adult book narrated from a child's point of view, and I just love Scout's childlike narrative. It was amusing. I mean, she made me laugh because she was like, Jem and I found our father quite adequate, or something like that, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. Her Jem and Scout's relationship with Atticus was interesting, that they can say things like that. And Jem and Scout had such a naturally written, realistic sibling relationship, and I loved reading about the two of them. Like Scout, she was a tomboy, she was always getting in fights, she was very inquisitive, she's determined. I felt for her when she got left out by her brother and Dill because she's a girl. Jem just being like, I'll hang out with you at home, but not at school, not at school. That was just literally such a typical thing that I could picture for siblings, just so typical. And then Scout being confused over his behaviour change was just hilarious, like, oh, I'm sure we'll be fine tomorrow. But yeah, I loved Scout. She was a great narrative. She was just great to read about her, and I loved her. Jem was also interesting. Like I said, he's quite close to his sister. He's more easygoing and he's protective of her. You see that at the end. Over the course of the book, he's getting wiser and he's like the whole I'm an adult now thing. He was kind of like a typical older brother, really, and I really liked his character. Francis, I'm mentioning Francis because he is such a little shit and he is such a crybaby. There was that whole thing where he was like baiting Scout basically, and she punches him in the face, which he totally had coming, and he goes crying to his mum like, Scout said this and that and then Scout did this and oh my god, and it was like, seriously, you little baby, you are such a shit. Dill. I liked Dill. Don't get me wrong, I liked Dill. I loved his character, but he is full of so much bullshit with all of his stories. At one point, he really reminded me of Jay from The Inbetweeners, going on about all of these stories that are supposedly true, and it's like, right, sure, I believe you. Alpernia, I wasn't sure about her at the beginning because Scout's like, she has a tyrannical presence, but it became pretty obvious that she really cares about Scout and Jem, and she likes having Scout with her in the kitchen. She likes hanging out with Scout, and it became obvious that she cares about these kids so much, and I really like that because they don't have a mother, and I felt like Calpurnia was kind of a motherly presence to them. Atticus, I really, really like. I feel like he's the hero of the book. He's truthful to the kids. If they ask him a question, he will answer it, and he'll answer it honestly. He will always answer them. He does the best he can with the kids. He does what's right. He's determined to do what's right. I think he struggles for justice in this town. It's such a prejudiced town, but he struggles for justice. And I think the whole case and how he behaved kind of got the conscience of the people of the town. Because he was just trying to do what was right. And I think he made them see that what they were doing was wrong. And I just really liked him, and I just loved his relationship with his kids. I thought he was brilliant. I really like Miss Maudie as well. I really like Miss Maudie because that scene with Scout and like all the ladies were laughing at her even though Scout hadn't meant to be funny, and she wasn't, and she was just holding Scout's hand while all the ladies were being horrible, like really horrible. And I really liked her. Boo Radley, we have to mention Boo Radley because it was the mystery of him that started to draw me into the book first. I was completely fascinated by him, and he was so mysterious, and I loved that he saved the day in the end and we got to meet him. And I kind of wished we got to see more of him, but then there would be no mystery. I like the myths surrounding the Radley place and Boo Radley, like, oh, don't eat the nuts from the tree because they're poisoned or whatever. It had a very childlike quality to it, and even the adults believed it, even the stories that sounded like they were mostly made up by kids. And I could imagine this small town where everyone believes that, even the adults believe everything that's said. I think Atticus taking the case and the consequences of that had more of an impact, I think, when told from the point of view of a child. Scout has no idea what's going on in the beginning. She's got these kids being nasty to her, as only kids can be. Being nasty to her as only kids can be. You've got that going on. She's overhearing Atticus and the others talking about some things. You've got adults making comments as well to kids about it, and they have no idea what's going on. Cal and Atticus, they explain as best as they can, and Atticus is very truthful about it, and yet Scout still doesn't understand entirely why the people are being like this, and it just had such an impact for me. Talk about some meaningful scenes now, because I've got quite a few marked down. First of which is the mob scene. You know this scene could have escalated into some serious violence, and you can feel the tension of the scene, but Scout has no idea of the situation. You can feel the tension, you know what's going on, you know what's happening, you know what could happen, but Scout's completely oblivious. She's just trying to get her schoolmate's father to talk to her, and it's really tense, and then he kneels down and speaks to her, and they all leave, and it's really hard to describe how it feels reading that. The next scene is at the court, and Scout basically overhears this group of people complaining that Atticus has been court appointed to defend Tom and that he's actually defending him. Scout's so confused why they're upset that Atticus is actually doing his job as he's been court appointed to do, because she has no idea that at the time period most lawyers who would have been court appointed to a black person in a case would not have done that job. Next scene I want to talk about, it's kind of a multitude, because you have Dill having to be taken out of the courtroom because he's crying, and then you have Jem getting upset about it and Scout getting upset about it, and it's all about the case. None of the adults care about what's going on. The kids are the only ones that care and are actually getting upset about it. Kids see everything that's wrong with the adults' behaviour. They do not understand the behaviour, but the adults don't see what is wrong with their own behaviour. The next scene really made me angry, right? So you have classroom scene, Scout's at school, and her teachers had them bring in newspaper clippings from current affairs, and one kid has brought in a clipping. We're 1930, so it's a clipping about Hitler, and it's before the war, and he's just gained power, I think. He's doing things to the Jews, and the kids are asking her about it, like, why is he doing this? I don't understand. And then the teacher's just like, I'm going to give you a talk about democracy, kids. The teacher is explaining democracy, okay? She's explaining democracy to these kids, and she's like, we're better than Germany because we are a democracy and they're a dictatorship, and we don't persecute people, and we don't believe in persecuting people, or whatever the wording was. And then she's like, persecution comes from people who are prejudiced. How fucking hypocritical is that? I literally read that and was like, hypocrite! Completely mind blown. It's like you've just persecuted this innocent man because you are prejudiced, and now you're trying to tell these kids that you're better than Hitler because you don't believe in persecuting people and you're not prejudiced. Never come across such a hypocrite before, and it was literally just like, what is going on? That scene literally made me so angry because it is pure hypocrisy, and I just got so angry. That is not the only part of the book that made me really, really angry. I actually spent a lot of the book being really, really angry. You had the trial, the verdict of the trial, what happened after the trial. You had Mr. Ewell swanning about afterwards, thinking he was the shit because he thought he was going to be a hero for what he did. I mean, this situation would have happened a hell of a lot in real life. Maybe not exactly the same as the book, but very similar cases, very similar situations. I'm thinking that this could have been someone's real life. This could have actually happened to someone, or something similar could have happened to it. I don't understand people. I do not understand people, and I don't understand how people can live with themselves when they basically murder an innocent man. The Ewells were just... every single one of them was a nasty piece of work, but Mr. Ewell was the worst. He was completely and utterly despicable, complete scum. Feel like, even though he got what was coming to him, I do feel like he killed an innocent man and he pretty much still got away with it. It's just such a snapshot into the time period. It's a snapshot into many small towns in the south, and it's just the fact that you sit and think about this and you think this is actual history, and the amount of times that stuff like this would have happened is just mind-blowing. It really is. To Kill a Mockingbird was a very emotional book because not only did it make me angry at times, it also made me very, very sad, but at the same time it made me laugh at other points. So it's a very emotional book, and it manages to explore all of this seriously, compassionately, but still maintaining some humour to it. Not all the time, and not at the expense of the serious parts, but there is still some humour. Arguably, the case is doomed from the start. If you look at the time period, look at the location, look at all the things that have happened, I went into it thinking this is not going to be a win. It's not going to be a win. In the course of the trial, I changed my mind a little bit. What Jem was saying and the points Atticus was making, I started to feel a small sense of hope that, okay, maybe Atticus might win this. Maybe, and this is going to be one of the few instances where what you know is probably going to happen doesn't happen. I shouldn't have been surprised at the outcome. Reading the book, I really shouldn't have been surprised at the outcome, but I really was completely frustrated. I was angry and I was upset. All of the injustice that the characters felt, I felt it as well. Saddest thing about the book is that it makes you realise that the lessons in this book are still relevant today in this day and age, and that is the saddest thing about the book. And I think that's one of the things that makes it a classic. So that has been my video on To Kill a Mockingbird for the 2016 Classics Challenge. It was my March book, and in April I will be reading Emma by Jane Austen, because I won a copy of it and so did my friend Rebecca, who I will link down below, and we're going to buddy read it. As usual, social media links will be down below, so come say hey, as will the Goodreads links and the Book Depository links. Thank you for watching, guys, and I hope to see you soon.